Thanks very much for the opportunity to share. I've been a member of the ARPC for about 10 years now, and never was compelled to have to present. Always made my way out of the presentation mode and left that to the really switched on people that I work with. So this is my first presentation here. So when I was asked to make this presentation, PTAC asked me to kind of lay out a bit of a breadcrumb trail, some connective tissue. You know, how does everything that we do as a group come together, and what is it that I'm doing with those results? So I'd like to present that to you folks today, and I promise no more than one, maybe two slides that'll make your eyes glaze over, and we'll get into results right away. So with that, I'll start. When I try to chase funding at the federal level, I have to line up with some pretty obscure targets sometimes. And so the communications products that I have to produce have to line up with these policy statements. And those are on this slide, and the slide's going to be available, so I won't spend a whole lot of time there. I'll spend a couple of minutes on what I consider is our business case, and what are the opportunities that we have available to us by virtue of the R&D that we do and the types of solutions that we develop. Based upon the wide array of international things that I engage in with a number of the people here today, I think it's fair to say that Canada produces every kind of hydrocarbon that exists in the world, and we face every challenge that exists in the world, both technically, environmentally, and socially. And so hence, any of the solutions that we develop here are not only solutions that are implementable here, but those are implementable solutions anywhere in the world. And so that's been the target for what it is that I do and what it is that I bring to this partnership table. And I'm going to give you just a little bit of background about my domestic program and then jump right into what we're doing internationally. And that'll kind of segue or provide a segue for Matt and Dave then to start speaking to the results that we're actually achieving. So the funding from my program, I get it from a variety of sources, one of which is the NRCan Program for Energy Research and Development. That funding is available in 4-year cycles. It's a competitive process, and the competition is getting really, really stiff. So the degree to which we make our business cases successfully is the degree to which we get any money at all. Another thing that we've been fairly successful in getting funds from is predicated on Canada's international climate change initiatives and objectives. And I think it's fair to say that at the political level, be it federally or provincially, there are a lot of funding mechanisms and platforms that are created for policy reasons, and they may not necessarily understand the types of results that they can achieve. And so when Canada or any other country commits significant funds to international climate change, I see that as an opportunity for us to try and get in there and make a case for having some of those funds support the type of work that we do and bring those results back home for our country and for Canadians, and also make them available to the world so that we have those opportunities to profitably share those results. And I think it's fair to say that we've been fairly successful at that. We've got a long relationship with the International Global Methane Initiative, for example, and we've been able to leverage quite a large amount of US EPA funding all around the world. We've worked in China, Mexico, Colombia, in the Middle East, Russia, former Soviet republics. The former APP partnership, we did some work under that. That partnership was disbanded. And then most recently, and the partnership and the opportunity that I'm going to spend the most time discussing with you this afternoon is under the UNFCCC, there's a fund known as Fast Start Financing, and that's been developed to kind of facilitate the post-2012 Kyoto objectives. So our domestic collaboration, the PTAC ARPC, of course, it's been a core, I think, of what it is we've been able to achieve domestically and internationally. At that table, we're able to co-fund the federal funds that I'm able to bring to the table with the CAP, what used to be the ERAC program, and now is the OPERF program. And I think it's fair to say that probably the majority of the funding that we've been able to collaborate with has been coming from industry and from Alberta. So again, when I go back to Ottawa or anywhere else in Canada, I'm able to share that Canadian taxpayers' dollars are leveraged pretty highly by industry and other partners here in Canada. Then I've also been able to deal directly with CAP and ERCB. Probably the flagship project there that I would point to is when we started developing the Fugitive Emissions BMP that's now pointed to from Directive 60. And as Randy alluded to earlier, you know, our group has tried to, in hockey terms, be where the puck is going as opposed to where it's at the time. And looking back on that Fugitive Emissions BMP development, we started that process long before fugitives were on anybody's radar. And it wasn't until after we started that things in Alberta started to progress from a policy and regulatory standpoint, such that BMP was developed almost in real time and able to be implemented when the policies were still fresh. So I think that's a performance indicator for the success of our collaboration. Then we were also quite instrumental in funding and supporting and working with CTAC West on the eco-efficiency studies and also the development of the fuel gas BMPs. And then, of course, my long and ongoing collaboration with Carleton and with Clearstone Engineering. And we've done a number of projects that you're going to hear about later today, so I won't speak to that. I'll let them do that. The objectives we've had, it's like Randy said, we want to identify emerging issues and identify the stakeholders that can help us address those emerging issues. And we really want to avoid reactive research activity. I think it's fair to say when I came into this group a little more than 10 years ago now, we were studying primarily the flare efficiency subject matter at the time. And I think it's also fair to say that we were really in reactive mode. We learned a lot from that. We had research that was internationally accepted, peer-reviewed, and considered credible, and yet when we present here in Alberta, even 3 and 4 years after the fact, we'd still be called upon or challenged as to why our results didn't line up with a particular report that was developed in 1996. And it took us a long time to overcome that, and I think we've learned from it, and we've demonstrated on a couple of occasions, as was discussed this morning with the flaring work that you heard from U of A and you know the Fugitive Emissions BMP and other things that we've done. I think we've positioned ourselves such that we're no longer in reactive mode, that we're being proactive. And strategic partnerships, I think, is really, really important. We have to have all the stakeholders at the table because then the results that come out make sense. They're implementable, they're cost effective, and based upon the design criteria that we've always chosen to follow, and that is these have to be internationally standardized. They're really solid, sound solutions. And again, I think that's evidenced because we've got a number of high-profile international partnerships that are really seeking out our products and our solutions and our people. So internationally transferable solutions, like I've said, the types of projects that we've undertaken really have served to promote the expertise of Canada's energy and environmental R&D community. And we have a lot of credibility outside of this country. And I think that gets overlooked sometimes and possibly doesn't get as effectively communicated here in Canada as it could or should be. The results that we're developing, they inform international policy and regulation, and they go on to enhance the credibility of our energy sector internationally. And I'm going to give you some specific examples in Colombia and Mexico. But I'm not overstating when I say that we're constantly and currently being courted by international governments to help them develop policies and regulations and solutions that are going to help them to achieve their climate change objectives and their air quality objectives and their sustainability objectives in their countries. And trust me, that's not an overstatement. And yet we will go to, annually we go to the UNFCCC COP meetings and we get internationally criticized as being dinosaurs. And that doesn't jive with the reality. So how do we go about communicating our success and the efficacy of what it is we do such that more Canadians know about it and that we can develop really effective communications tools and products that allow us to brag about the really good things that we're doing, because we are doing them and we've got a lot of advocates in other countries that would stand up and support us in that. And again, I guess finally with this slide, we have some significant economic opportunities over and above the image opportunities to export those solutions. The service providers, the technology providers get a lot of profile when they engage in our projects. And I think it's fair to say, Dave, that there's economic opportunities available when we do those things. There. So I think we have to be able to communicate that we export a whole lot more than just oil and gas. Our country can be a go-to place for a whole lot of things, not just the energy products. So with that, I want to transition into what we're doing internationally. So under the UNFCCC, the post-2012 Kyoto mechanism, as you're all aware, Canada, I think for a bunch of defensible reasons, withdrew itself from the Kyoto Protocol last December in South Africa. But it's important that we understand that they didn't walk away from climate change, and they didn't walk away from a commitment to sustainable energy production and global sustainability of our sector and our industry. They've invested heavily, they being the federal government, has invested heavily along with many other governments in a new fund that's known as Fast Start Financing. And under that fund, the objective is to develop or help developing countries develop nationally appropriate mitigation actions. And this is, I would say, the follow-up to what used to be the CDM mechanism and JI. And I think it's also fair to say that all of the potential that could have maybe been realized under CDM and JI was not actually realized for a whole lot of technical and practical reasons. And the objective was, through the development of this NAMA process, to fill some of those gaps and create some opportunities. So the objectives are measurable and verifiable reductions to emissions, and intended to enable mitigation actions and then subsequently access successfully financing for future climate agreements. And this is predicated on market forces. So anything that we're doing here and anything that we do that's complementary to this is very complementary to what it is we have to do in our daily lives here in Alberta, and making sound business cases for the types of solutions that we'd like to implement. So I draw your attention to the final bullet, because it's going to come up again a little bit later on, but you'll notice the hierarchy here that I put in bold font: policies, programs, and projects. That's the UNFCCC talk speak, and there's an assumption there that I guess exists in a lot of institutions that, boy, if we create policies, programs and projects are just going to naturally fall out of that. And I think it can be argued that that's not always the case. And we're going to show you what we're doing and how some international governments have taken what we're doing and said that they feel that's a better approach. A little bit of background on NAMAs. Fast Start funding was established at the Cancun meetings last year. This is new and additional funding, so this is not money that's being taken from something, so at the expense of something else. Pretty significant funding. $30 billion was invested and committed to over essentially 2.5 years. And I think it's also important for us to realize that when these types of funds are created, if for no other reason than political and optical reasons, those funds get spent and they get dispersed. Does that mean they always get spent on really productive projects or initiatives? I think it's arguable that not all the projects and initiatives are as fruitful or productive as they could be. So here's our opportunity to come into this area with some really implementable solutions and get access potentially to some pretty significant funding. And the post-2012 fund is currently being negotiated. The early numbers that I've seen are in the hundreds of billions of dollars. So again, significant resources. The next bullet, I think, is something that the marketplace has been longing for a long time, that these NAMAs have to be in place for any recipient country to be eligible for funding. So there, I think appropriately, global countries that are contributing this are starting to put some boundary conditions around the funding and would like to see some results. So many countries are starting to develop NAMA objectives, and they're submitting those to the UNFCCC. And now they're in a position where they have to start developing NAMA plans in order to identify the types of projects they'd like to undertake and those plans have to be credible in order to get the money to start to flow. So this is a significant opportunity for Canadian expertise. Environment Canada committed $3 million out of its $400 million commitment to that $30 billion over 2 years to enable me to work with a lot of the people here in this room in developing oil and gas industry NAMA plans for both Colombia and Mexico, and you'll see the breakdown there. The last bullet here is quite significant. PTAC is administering that $3 million fund, and that's a really unique precedent that we were successful in setting up. Typically, and this is not unique to Canada, typically when international countries commit to these international funds, it goes to international development banks or big organizations like that to distribute those funds. And when I first made the application to try and get some of these funds, the question was, well, which bank are you going to use? And I suggested that I wasn't going to use any of them. Because for a whole lot of reasons, not the least of which is that I think we could deliver quite a bit more effectively and efficiently from right here at home. And it took a lot of work, but we were successful in finally convincing the federal government to liberate this $3 million and let it be administered from Canada in such a way that we could never be accused of being incestuous or not being fair. And the reason that that worked is because the Colombian and the Mexican government, who've observed what it is we do, have done in Mexico in the past, what we've done in China, and what we do under some other international partnerships that I alluded to earlier, came out and explicitly stated, even if this money were to go to the World Bank or some other development bank, we would request that this Canadian team come and implement these projects. So why not forego the overhead that the development bank would charge and turn that level of resource into project funding? And we were successful in defending that. So again, the takeaway from that for me was, to what degree have we been ineffective in communicating to our own government and our own bureaucrats the level of expertise and the level of international credibility that we have, such that we could be legitimate recipients of these types of resources to go out and help Canada and Canadians realize these international objectives for climate change and social and environmental and economic sustainability. So I don't think I can overstate the coup that we were able to get these funds. So Canada, Colombia, and Mexico were now working to develop NAMAs for the upstream and downstream oil and gas industry. And we're kind of coining this phrase, credible NAMAs, because it's been discussed internationally. You know, what's a NAMA? What's it going to look like? And you know, the absence of credibility is what undermined a lot of CDM opportunities in the past. So how are we going to be different? And so the types of things that we're building into our model are, you know, baseline activity determination has to be there. It has to be rigorous. It has to be verifiable, and has to provide confidence for people that are going to invest. Quantifications of emission reduction opportunities, economic business case development, environmental performance improvements that can be measured, monitored, and sustained. So oil and gas NAMAs, in our estimation at least, should be nothing short of business case development that we use every day in our industry when we're competing for diminishing resources in order to get some of our projects done. So credible NAMA development is going to require a rigorous, standardized business case approach, and that's what we're bringing to this marketplace. And we're being complimented internationally for our approach, and it's almost surprising to me and to some of us that are working in this that it is so surprising to this community that our approach is so unique. I'm surprised that, given the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been available in the past, that this type of business case approach wouldn't have been undertaken and standardized in the past. So the NAMA plans for Colombia and Mexico are going to address policy priorities that they have set for management of the energy, of their energy sector, environment, and their economy. I think it's fair to say that the Colombians and the Mexicans, under the restructuring and reorganization that they've undergone over the last number of years, have really demonstrably linked economy, environment, and social sustainability. The degree to which they're realizing it, they're at the front end of that curve. And that is why, one of the reasons why they have said that they're engaging us. They want to realize those objectives. And it's been my experience, and I think David's as well, that they've stayed consistent in keeping those priority objectives linked and integrated throughout the years that we've been working with them. So kudos to them for that. Advancing the development and transfer of knowledge in clean energy technologies. Again, huge opportunity for us. They're more than willing to invest in clean energy and clean technologies. They want to ensure the economic, environmental, and social sustainability of oil and gas production, no different than us. And so the case studies that we're able to realize down there are going to be very much relevant to us and transferable to us as well. Develop new and profitable opportunities to measurably improve resource recovery and environmental performance. I think we could speak those words anywhere here in Canada and we'd get buy-in. And at the end of this campaign, we're going to develop a list of implementable mitigation actions for Colombia and Mexico, and they then, as governments, will submit them to this new and emerging NAMA registry. And we are currently the only ones in the world working to develop oil and gas NAMAs. So we have an opportunity here to set the standard, and it's going to be a really high standard. The scope of what we're doing, energy and emissions measurement projects, things that we've been doing here all along. So again, it's our collective efforts and investments that I'm now able to take abroad with partners and collaborators here. So this is work that we've invested in for well over a decade. This belongs to you. This belongs to us. We're doing bottom-up development. Now, we'll go back to that, those bullets that I shared earlier, or the hierarchy that the UNFCCC gave. Everything that we're going to be doing is based on comprehensive measurement studies. Facilities that are, and we're going to be measuring at facilities that are really highly representative of the Pemex and the Ecopetrol sectors. As well, the Mexicans in particular, but Colombians as well, have recognized that the growth area in their countries is heavy oil. And the Mexicans approached me in May because they've got a huge, huge issue with heavy oil production. And it was significant enough that Pemex actually stopped a lot of their cold heavy oil production for a whole lot of reasons. And I was informed in May that Schlumberger, and this again is precedent setting what I'm about to tell you, Schlumberger was just awarded a 25-year operatorship for a huge heavy oil field in north central Mexico. So that goes against the constitution of the Mexican government right now, because Pemex owns all the resources and Pemex is constitutionally required to be the operator. So there's been constitutional amendments made to enable Schlumberger to be the in-place operator because they felt that Pemex didn't have the internal expertise or the knowledge to be able to successfully produce these resources. And they came and they pointed out that they were aware of the flare and vent economic study that we undertook, that Matt led over the last couple of years. And based upon that type of knowledge and that type of information, they want to be able to develop these resources in such a way that there's essentially full solution gas recovery and utilization. So that's precedent setting, again, and that's something that was thought of and undertaken and delivered from right here in Canada. So Matt, congratulations on that. That's an amazing thing to have a company come along and say what you guys are doing in Canada will help us to realize some of our economic objectives in Mexico. So the bottom-up approach that we're taking enables successful development of projects, programs, or policies. So we've inverted that. Based upon the representative nature of the approach that we're taking, the governments all feel that they can go from the project level and develop programs and then policies to satisfy the UNFCCC and comply with their climate change objectives. So again, I think it's something that we can be proud of as Canadians, that we can help these governments achieve these things. And it would be, I think, really encouraging if our own regulators and policymakers were more aware of this and could refer to what it is we're influencing internationally and globally and consider it while they're negotiating and discussing the future of our industry here in Canada. Scalability, NAMA development based on measurement studies is going to support verifiable facility or sector baseline and benchmarking development. Again, stuff that we've been doing for 10 years here, collectively and collaboratively. Statistical extrapolation certainty to develop the accurate sector emissions inventories. They're really lacking in inventory development. They don't fully understand or comprehend what's going on in their jurisdiction, and hence they're not fully aware of what their opportunities are. Standardized and verifiable determination of the sector emission reduction potentials is going to come out of that, and that then helps them to set their targets and their objectives. And then extrapolation to develop sector strategies through the identification of those highly replicable opportunities that we uncover in both Canada and Mexico, in China, Colombia and Mexico, sorry. Again, more scalability. The sector strategies that these governments have chosen to develop, and I think they're very logical. It's the way our sector is broken down in the marketplace, upstream, midstream, and downstream. And the projects that are based upon these plans, once they get implemented, they're designed in such a way that they will enable third-party verification. These are two jurisdictions that are fortunate enough to be able to not only monetize and develop the economics for projects based on the value of the resources that they're producing, but they also have the opportunity to then monetize the carbon and potentially get funding or credits for that. So again, they're optimizing their opportunities, and we're helping them to do that. And the eligibility for post-2012 carbon financing, I think is again something I don't want to understate here. The approach that we're taking is considered the gold standard with respect to the development of carbon credits and verification of those. And 5 years ago it might have been argued that that might not have a lot of utility here at home, but given the opportunities and the liabilities that we face here in Alberta right now with respect to credits and offsets, having this kind of competency in the way we manage carbon and trade carbon is something that just shouldn't be understated. It maintains the confidence that we need for a commodity to retain its value, and we need to be able to verify that those things are being managed and reduced and dealt with. And that's a skill set that hasn't necessarily been real functional in areas or countries of the world. And I would point to the tens of billions of dollars worth of write-offs that happened in Europe a few years ago based on carbon junk bonds when the accounting was finally done. The only sad thing is the accounting was done after the money was spent. Okay, benefits. These internationally standardized and credible business case implementation plans are going to identify all the technically achievable opportunities, and they're going to inform corporate and government policy decision makers to be able to identify what are the cost-effective bundles inside that technically achievable. I think that's something that's really important to inform the discussions both domestically and globally. And I see I'm about to get hammered, so let me, okay, maybe this one point here. I alluded to earlier that we go to these annual COP meetings and get criticized internationally for being considered to be backwards and almost against climate change and sustainability. And I think one of the opportunities we have with this NAMA work is that it's a UNFCCC mechanism. And we have an opportunity now to go into that forum as early as Qatar this December and start presenting preliminary results and demonstrate in that venue of criticism that we are actually leading and that we're helping some of their target jurisdictions to develop these new opportunities and actually comply with them in an economically sustainable manner. So that is another opportunity that I would hope we could not overlook and not squander. So in summary, Canadian R&D is recognized globally as leading, and I'd suggest that we need to maybe become more aware of that leadership domestically. Our Canadian solutions are internationally transferable, and international uptake of our solutions benefits not only our image, but our economy. And international implementation of our solutions has the ability to inform our domestic policy and regulatory discussions as well. And finally, these are just a number of the partners that I work with. So again, this is not about what I do, it's about what they do and what you do. And you equip me with the ability to then take that into a forum and create some opportunities for us as Canadians. So thank you.